Like, I think it's something that's generally a bad idea, but if we can get enough money out of the place that we're intervening in, and we can effectively make it worthwhile.
Who's we? Who's we? I'll have a restrained but reasonable, tempered response to it. I'll say, Joe Brandon, you did the damn thing. I'm proud of you. Like when he pulled out of Afghanistan, right? But when a Democrat does something that I find to be morally repugnant, abhorrent, like, for example, right? Israel doing Palestine, I will openly call it out because I am not regime pilled in the same way that Asmongold is, right? So at this point, the only consistency that you hear from the likes of Asmongold, and not just Asmongold, but he's basically just a vessel for MAGA. Whenever I criticize him, I know a lot of people go, "Oh my God, why are you attacking Asmongold?" But like, this is me doing hogwatch, baby. This is something that I used to do all the goddamn time, and you guys used to love when I used to do hogwatch, and this is no different. So when he has a take, it's usually just like the rest of the hogs, completely and utterly inconsistent, very hypocritical, and oftentimes super dumb. So let's take a look. So he says, "Oh, yeah, I said no to interventions, except some interventions I'm on board with."
There are some instances where I'd be okay with it. It's pretty simple. Like, I think it's something that's generally a bad idea, but if we can get enough money out of the place that we're intervening in, and we can effectively make it worthwhile.
Who's we? Who's we? You speaking French? Are you on the Epstein flight logs? No. You don't even leave your house, right? I don't think you're on the Epstein flight logs. Let's be real. But it's so funny because, like, he's like, "Oh yeah, we're getting money out of this." It's like, are we? Are you? Is anybody in your audience a part of this we? Or is the we an increasingly smaller number of like the global financial elite who may or may not be directly related to Jeffrey Epstein or may or may not have had their names all over the Epstein files? Because I don't think anybody in your chat or mine is actually a C-suite executive at any number of different corporations that will benefit from this. I don't think they're major stockholders in any of these corporations, whether it be the military-industrial complex or whether it be the oil and gas giants or whether it be any kind of like developmentary project that might go into Venezuela and engage in asset stripping. You're not a part of the team, little bro. So what is this we, right? Because remember, one thing that a lot of people also fail to comprehend is this was the reason why everyone was mad about Iraq at the end of the day. Because Iraq was sold on a lie, "Oh, we're going to democratize," but everybody quickly understood that it was about oil, and people got mad. So why did people get mad about the whole reality that Iraq was about oil? Why did people still get mad? Is it because they were woke moralizers who thought, "Well, no, that's Iraqi oil, they should keep it"? No. The Americans got mad because they realized that it wasn't for them. Okay? So why do you think this is going to be any different? What leads you to believe that Trump is going to do any sort of redistributive policy that many of your followers would already consider to be socialist anyway, right? With any of the bounties that the American empire will secure from Venezuelan natural resources
For us, then I'd be okay with it. Does that make sense? So it's all about whether we're making money off of it. That's my primary function, is that
like whether we're making money off of it. Hey, dummy, that's how the Iraq war was sold too, to the population that was listening. Like that's how it was sold as well. When people were like, "Oh, okay, well, there's at least oil there, at least maybe we're getting oil. We're just like looting the Iraqi coffers, right?" Did you see a crumb of that? No.
I think about, is this good for Americans? And if it's making us money, it's beneficial for us, it's lowering our costs.
Bro said we are making money, so it's fine to invade anyone. Yeah, I mean, look, that's already obviously a morally repugnant position to have. But it's also doubly stupid because it's not even correct. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, across the board, I'm not going to sit here and be like, no, it's actually good if they were like invading Venezuela and like stealing all of that revenue and stealing those natural resources and then distributing it back to the American population. Because then you're basically in Nazi territory at that point, right? You're like, okay, might makes right. We get to dominate the world and we get to redistribute all of those super profits back to the average American. The unfortunate problem is that probably will be infinitely more popular than whatever Trump is doing right now. But the entire point of imperialism is not so that there is that redistributive policy to the in-group that is designed as like the people that are worthy of receiving these super profits. The entire point of imperialism is that it is a necessity under capitalism, under global capital, as profit rates decline, right? As profit rates decline, global capital looks to new markets that they can continue dominating. Looks to new markets that they can continue dominating. And they do this so that they can consistently eke out profits wherever they can. But that doesn't actually happen for you. That's not something that you'll see from, right? You're not going to see the benefits of that at all. That's never going to come into your pocket in any way, shape, or form. As a matter of fact, you're going to get destroyed. What you will experience on the receiving end of this, if you are a working class individual in the United States of America, is NAFTA, right? America dominates other countries in its periphery, and then there is a crop of new labor that they can basically force to work for pennies on the dollar, and it's in close proximity. So obviously, they just take the labor away from U.S. soil and they move it over there, okay? And you just sit around and you think, why don't I have a job anymore? Then you start self-medicating because you back up, right? And you take some Oxycontin because, again, the Sackler family, Purdue Pharmaceutical, needs to make money off of you, right? So they put you in lifelong medical debt while simultaneously destroying your brain chemistry and cause you to develop a deep, crippling opioid addiction. This happens to many people's immediate family members in this country. And you sit around and you wonder, why is everything... And you think to yourself, okay, well, at least we're dominating some Venezuelans, right? Like maybe that's a good thing. No, it's not. It's the same cycle playing itself out again and again and again. And the moment that you lean into it in your desperation through all of the banality that you are experiencing in your day-to-day misery is the moment where you become a hog. It's that simple. You lean into the hog lifestyle, telling yourself that this is somehow actually beneficial for me. This is somehow helping me. It's not. And then when someone tells you that it's actually not beneficial to you, you get mad. You're like, yo, you must be a dirty commie. You know? Why are you ripping the wool from in front of my eyes? Why are you telling me that this is not, like, I'm trying to engage in some self-soothing behavior and you're sitting over here telling me that this is actually not going to be beneficial for me? Stop. But yeah, this 1 minute and 17-second video is a perfect encapsulation of how this works, how this cycle works. This time it'll be different because he goes from saying, one, faulty premise established. This is good for us. This is good for America. This is good. Right?
So it's
we will get money. We will make money. It's no different than Howard Butlick going on Fox News and saying the GDP increased by 4.3% in the month of December. That means every American is going to be 4.3% richer.
Money off of it. That's my primary function, is that I think about, is this good for Americans? And if it is, if it's making us money, it's beneficial for us, it's lowering our costs, or there's some other downstream effect of it, then yeah, I'd be okay with it. But us just going over there and doing it for no reason, no, I don't think so.
Yeah. Hey, that's what it was. Iraq was just going over there and doing it for no reason. In a way, this is the most like pathetic liberal assessment that you can arrive at, right? A liberal is a person who thinks every war but the current one was unjustifiable. A liberal is a person who thinks every civil rights movement, except for the current one, was good, right? And in some ways, he's doing this exact same thing. He's doing the same exact song and dance that I've heard from liberals over and over again when it's actually a Democrat in charge. And they're also continuing American empire, right? He's basically saying, you know, all the previous ones were they were just dumb. They were just for no reason, you know? But this one, this is for good reason. We get to make money here. Oh, really? Oh, really? Do explain to me how we will get to make money here, this and why this is different than the Iraq version of what took place, you know?
I don't think so. So yeah. And but that's really that's my viewpoint on it. That's what I think. No more pointless wars, period. Economical, logical interventions are fine. Yeah, exactly. And even if
yeah. The entire Yale and Harvard graduated MBA team of brilliant minds that actually put together the Iraq invasion and basically designed out how they were going to steal Iraq's natural resources, specifically its oil, literally years prior to the invasion of Iraq, by the way. Those guys were just stupid. No, they weren't. They were very smart, as a matter of fact. And so are these guys. Make no mistake. Yeah, sure, I joke about Trump being a moron all the goddamn time, but the team around him is still obviously brilliant. They're evil, okay? That's the difference. Like, there are still intelligent people in Donald Trump's team. There are intelligent people in the State Department, people that have spent their entire lives trying to figure out exactly how we are going to dominate the planet. Make no mistake, it would be a huge, huge mistake to undermine your enemy's intellect, to think that your enemy is actually stupid. Brilliant is a stretch. No, there are definitely brilliant people working in his teams. Of course there are. Okay? Of course there are. What are you talking about? These guys are some of the best educated people on the planet. Of course there are, intelligent people there. They're just evil. They're just straightforwardly evil. And if you want to think about like their stupidity, sure, they're not like they're intelligent in the specific field that they work in, but they might not be so intelligent when it comes to understanding the world or what the best outcomes are, or they might be deluded into thinking that they're actually doing this for America, right? Yeah, this is
foreign companies, and you're tired of it, and you're a goddamn American, and it's time to start acting like it.
Here, let's take a look at what his foreign intervention take was.
The people here, they're up until 2 a.m. Monday through Sunday. Doge did not recognize weekends. We're working all the time.
What inspired you to drop out of Harvard to do this?
Because you've grown up your entire life just like every other kid, and you've seen your entire country be sold out for foreign interests, foreign wars, and foreign companies. And you're tired of it. And you're a goddamn American, and it's time to start acting like it. That's why.
There's a lot of reform that's needed. I think the value of this and the impact here is
so cool seeing the Asman segment live. I usually have to wait to see it on YouTube the next day. Well, this is what you do when you don't have an argument, by the way, to exactly what I'm saying here. You know that I'm right, and it embarrasses you a little bit. So you have to turn around and say, oh, it's so silly that you're covering Asmongold again. You know? And this is after years and years of him covering me every single day. So we're not going to argue on this, all right?
so much more vast.
Either make a compelling case as to why I'm wrong and why you're actually right, or why Asmongold is right, which is even crazier that you would be dick riding to that degree, or just move on.
Than anything you could learn in a classroom.
Yeah, I mean, there are many instances where he has actually presented himself as an anti-interventionist because that was how Trump presented himself, right? There were so many people, because this is much larger than Asmongold. I'm using him as a vehicle to deliver an argument against the flip-flopping nature of MAGA, okay? For a lot of you, I know you get stuck on the fact that it's Asmongold because his audience comes in here and constantly derails the stream and you get annoyed, yada, yada, yada. But the reality of the matter is, this is an assessment not about just Asmongold, but the very nature of MAGA. Okay? This is hogwash. Through and through.
Lost civilian lives? Yeah, who gives? Like, I mean, if the thing is that if you're going to do this stuff, people are going to get killed. That's what's going to happen. It's going to happen for sure.
Yeah. The Iraq war was just for no reason, okay? Whereas the Venezuelan military campaign was actually for good reason, right? Is actually for good reason. I think another reason why a lot of people get annoyed when I do this kind of thing is because it sucks to see so many long-term community members who have like pivoted into Hogistan takes, you know, being full tilt hogs. And I think a lot of people get annoyed to see that as well, because there's a lot of people in here that when it comes to foreign policy they're hogs, right? That's just the reality. They're like very progressive on other stuff. They're like, oh yeah, I want to have healthcare. And they can't connect the two things. Like part of the reason why we're not spending any money on you is because we're spending money on this. We're spending money on endless military campaigns so that this douchebag can actually make money. Okay? This douchebag can get higher profits. But you can't comprehend that, so you delude yourself into thinking that American military and American security, okay, NatSec is also the lie that they actually traffic this kind of argument through. You go, oh, well, you just love China, I think, or you love Russia, or you just want China and Russia to dominate the world, and that's why you're saying this stuff. Meanwhile, America, baby, hell yeah. And it's like, no, brother, I want everyone to do right. Okay, I want everyone to have a good life. I want you to have a good life. I want all my haters to have a good life. I want them to all have health care. I want them to be able to go to college. I want them to be able to put their children through college. I want them to have a good job with good wages, with good benefits. I want them to be able to own a home. These are the things that I want. And I know that the more we focus on this, the more we focus on deluding ourselves as to why the American government is engaging in these kinds of military actions, the more we hyper focus on this stuff and try to justify it to ourselves, the more we move away from that reality, the more we move away from ever achieving said reality. Okay? That's it. It's pretty crazy. How in the ever we get so hoodwinked into thinking that foreign war is good actually now? My dad was on John Bolton for being the neocon thorn in Trump's side. This after previously supporting the Iraq and Afghanistan wars himself. Lol, in what way is Trump the peaceful dove that these people previously championed? Well, that's the thing. Trump is not the peaceful dove. They just have a cult-like attitude towards Donald Trump, and they're so deeply invested in it that they don't want to see anything outside of that. But it's not just Donald Trump. It's the tremendous amount of propaganda that is poured in from liberal outlets as well that normalize Trump's behavior when it comes to foreign policy, because foreign policy is uniparty, right? There are very few takes that you can find on CNN, New York Times, BBC, any number of these different mainstream media outlets that say, why are we doing this? This is dumb as hell. We shouldn't be doing this at all. They all engage in that same sane washing of Trump's insane behavior, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody is serving these people, okay? Everyone is serving the same masters. Everyone is serving the corporate oligopoly. Everyone is serving the same corporate interests. So they have to sit there and be like, well, you know, this guy's a brutal tyrant and a ruthless dictator, and it was actually illegal the way that they engaged him. But at the end of the day, it's not. It was a brilliant military campaign that they conducted, and hopefully it'll be fine. Hopefully it'll be fine. I mean, I guess we want the oil. We want the oil, right? Like, it's probably good that we have the oil, right? And that's it. Could you say one good thing about Trump? I don't mean this as a joke. I'm curious as someone from the left, if you can give one good thing from your perspective that he's done. Sure. I think taking government ownership over government ownership over, like, NVIDIA, for example, or Intel, is not something that I have an issue with. Operation Warp Speed was good too. Like, no, there are things that he could do on principle that I would agree with. The issue is where those profits get distributed to, and it's not going to come back into your pockets, right? So that's it. He ended the penny. Yeah, I don't really care about that. What is this? I like Hasan and Asmongold. I feel they both put forward very good points. I feel that's a rough argument. No, it's called wanting everyone to be okay. I'm watching him over Asmon right now. Number one in Hasan. And two, Hasan wants the rules to be abided by. The rules of the government works for the people. And Asmon's a little extreme and wants the government to get their ass kissed. No, I am against anyone and everyone that does not actually do right by working class people all around the world. That's it. Okay? That's it. It's that simple. It's not super complicated. It's super simple. Any kind of like, oh, where is your moral consistency beyond that is idiotic. Okay? I also think that clip got downvoted into hell. The head mod made a video responding to Miz because he said that only things that get upvotes or hate posts are you and him. It's hilarious, but I can't link it. Yeah, LSF is a cum sleeve for some of the most annoying, rapacious liberals and Asmongold dick riders. Let's be real. I mean, it's owned and operated by a sex pest and a dick rider, an orbiter. It's a snark subreddit. That's all it does. It's just to do propaganda. But it is what it is. Why don't you self-ban from there? I can't. I was banned from there before. They won't let me because I'm their cash cow, baby. What are you talking about? So where were we? Yeah, the subreddit is like 99% clips of me completely out of context. And it's it's brigaded into oblivion. It's botted into oblivion. Reddit knows it too. They don't really give, but I don't really give either. At this point in my career, if it wasn't for all the other like secondary markets that feed from that, like they think that the information that they get off that subreddit is actually good for content. It wouldn't mean anything. It would just be a cordoned off space for some of the most like racist European Redditors you've ever experienced. But unfortunately, a lot of, like I said, Reddit plagiarizers that make slop tube YouTube videos will farm whatever kind of outrage that they see on there. Anyway, this is what I was talking about, right? The New York Times should probably disclose that this op-ed writer was funded by Chevron, ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, and BP America, as they are all major donors to the Atlantic Council, to say nothing of their other major donors, the Pentagon, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, etc. This person, Matthew Kronig, is the vice president and senior director of the Atlantic Council's Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. Trump was right to oust Maduro. This is how liberal media sane washes Trump's idiotic actions, right? On the one hand, they'll be like, oh, we don't like the way that they did it. But on the other hand, they'll openly say, like, no, it was actually pretty fucking good. Okay? Remember when the New York Times published a report in 2016 detailing how these corporate-funded think tanks double as lobbying groups for their donors, and it largely focused on the Atlantic Council? Do the New York Times opinion editors read their own paper? How think tanks amplify corporate America's influence, right? Atlantic Council is again, another one of these think tanks that masquerades as like the reasonable liberal side of American foreign policy. I wonder if Hasan ever thinks he's wrong. I think I need you to explain to me what you think I'm saying that is wrong right now, right? Like, because for many people, this is not like, for many people, this is the only argument that they have where it's like, oh, Hasan, this guy's full of himself, right? Like, this guy full of himself, dude. It's like, okay, what do you think is wrong about anything that I'm saying? Yes, I did listen to today's daily. I'm already wired up from listening to today's daily, and it pissed me off. It was some of the most transparent, nefarious, pro-American empire propaganda that has ever graced my ear hole, okay? I couldn't believe it. They literally were like, oh my God, dude. They were just like, Machado is her biggest problem is that she is too passionate about saving Venezuelan democracy. It's like, yeah, really? That's her biggest problem. I can't stand it dude. This is what I'm talking about when I say like liberal media also plays a major role in at least like building the foundation for this argument, right? There's a different type of propaganda for different people. For the hogs out there who are just like in the MAGA cult, all you need to do is just repeat what Trump is saying and go, it's awesome, it's based, right? It doesn't matter how inconsistent Trump is. As long as you are inconsistent alongside him, most of the fans of Trump are not going to realize that there is this major inconsistency here. They just go along with whatever Trump is saying. For the liberals, however, you need to engage in more complex propaganda, right? You need to make them, for liberals to cheerlead Trump's actions, you have to tell them with nuance, like what Trump is doing is technically wrong and maybe illegal. But at the same time, it's like, well, this guy was a really ruthless tyrant, really up, and we had to depose him. And his opposition figure actually won by 70%, which is one of the crazy things that I've heard over and over again. Oh, really? So the opposition to Maduro's popularity aside, because certainly Maduro's popularity is obviously plummeted considering the economic conditions that Venezuelans were experiencing for like the last decade. It's been disastrous, right? So obviously when starving, you're going to hate the guy who's in charge, right? And it's virtually impossible to overcome the sanctions, right? They are designed in such a way, especially when you're a single resource economy, when you're wiped out, when your position, when your single resource is carefully excised out of the global marketplace, you're cooked. It's over. It's going to be virtually impossible for you to salvage your economy. And then the people are going to be understandably very mad. And in that cycle of repression, or in that cycle of anger, justifiable anger, righteous anger, obviously the administration is going to engage in tremendous repression, which is going to only expand on your unpopularity. Having said that, the notion that like the opposition won by 70% was so insane, because that was actually the opposition's numbers that they had revealed. I don't know what the actual election looked like. Do I believe that Maduro around with the numbers? Certainly. That's just classic that people do, okay? I don't think he is like a super popular leader. None of this actually matters, right? None of this actually matters. Having said that, however, the notion that the opposition actually won by 70% is such an insane statement. And the reason why it's such an insane statement is because if that was the case, the head of the opposition would not be begging for Israel to intervene in the country, would not be begging for America to intervene in the country. You can have a much stronger organic revolt, okay? It's ridiculous, okay? There would currently be a civil war in the country if that was the case. Can you imagine, like, the only base of support, 30%? 30% is the base of support. Like, maximum base of support. It's just it's ridiculous. Yeah. Khan Vizsla claiming 68.74 insane. They would have killed him by now. Yeah, they would have hung him. They would have hanged him off the presidential palace in a country where 70% of the population is on board. And before people say Trump at 30%, you do realize something, right? The material conditions are genuinely different. If America's economy resembled Venezuela's crippled economy due to sanctions, and Trump was at 30%, we would have hanged Trump too. Like, that's crazy. The Americans would literally revolt at that point. It's an entirely different set of circumstances. There is no world in which a nation's leader, like Erdogan, I'll give you an example of Erdogan. Erdogan, over many, many years, has engaged in what I always like to say is unfair but somewhat free elections, okay? Unfair, certainly, but free, right? And he has, through electioneering and through all these different things, through creating a new coalition here and there, has been able to win over at least 51% of the votes. That's just real. I hate him, but that is unfortunately the reality. And many Turks, well, now his situation is a little bit different, but I think many Turks would also agree to that, right? Like, we have a lot of hogs in Turkey that love him, right? If Erdogan was at 30% with the conditions resembling Venezuela, there would be mass revolt. It would be virtually impossible to control, especially if Erdogan was also outside of the American periphery and not a part of the NATO security apparatus. Okay? Abi Erdoğan'la örneği verme, yanlış söylüyorsun çünkü referandumda bile hile yaptıklarıyla ilgili makaleler var. Abicim hile yapmıyor demiyorum. Okay? Hile de yapsa %51'i getirmek imkansız. Okay? Yani 49'su 51'e koydu diyelim hileyle. Yani yapmayın etmeyin arkadaşlar. Yine kendi komşularınızı görmüyor musunuz? Görmüyor musunuz diğer Erdoğan'ı seven adamları? Maalesef yani bu doğruya doğru. Hala seveni var. Bu kadar basit. Yapacak bir şey yok. Eğer %30'da olsa %51'e getirmeye çalışsa o zaman anasını sikerler adamın. Bu kadar basit. Ama %49'sa %51'e çıkarabilir. Ama %30'sa, %20 ise, %30'sa ve durum böyleyken %20 ise o zaman o adamlar, senin komşuların da artık Erdoğan'ı sevmiyor demek ki. Evet, günün sonunda adam yol yapıyor, köprü yapıyor, sike sike alıyor oyları. Bu kadar basit yani. Yani çünkü var, adamın arkasında inanılmaz milyonlarca Türk var. Bu kadar basit. Venezuela'da aynı, Maduro'nun arkasında milyonlarca Venezuela var. Zaten neyse, hani Erdoğan'la Maduro'yu da şey yapmıyorum, birebir yapmıyorum yani. Anyway. Ayaklanırdık, öyle bir şey olsa bu son zamanlarki protestolarda kanıtladık zaten onu bence. Evet. So, the point is, as far as like propaganda that we're looking at, right? This is how liberals brainwash Donald Trump. This is how liberals actually justify military action like this, okay? And it plays a big role. It happens. It happens in ways that you can't even comprehend. It happens unless you have an eye for this. You're just going to kind of like read a news. You're going to read a news article and you're just going to move on, right? But this is how it is. This is how it goes. Okay? There is ironically a Turkey connection with Maduro, for the record, because I'm almost certain. I think the reporting on like telling Maduro off to Turkey was correct, where they were like, just leave the country and go to Turkey and let us run the country. You know? I could totally see that. Lan yine mi çıktık bir yerden? Evet doğru abi, masadayız. Turkey's at the table. Anyway, again, Chevron is the top, if not the top donor to the Atlantic Council. New York Times also published this today. Maybe they should do some minimum conflict of interest disclosures. I don't know. Why Chevron could reap the biggest rewards from Venezuela. And Chevron is one of the top donors to the Atlantic Council, this guy's think tank. This guy is the vice president and senior director of a think tank that is getting money from all of the people that stand to benefit from military conquest in Venezuela. This is not Fox News, chat. This is the Gray Lady, the paper of record. This is a guest essay in the New York Times, okay? This is how you sell it to the liberals. It's much simpler to sell it to the Republicans, right? It's much simpler to sell it to the hogs because all you need to do is say, oh, yeah, base, Trump is base, shut up, libtard, he's doing it for me. But there's a different way to propagandize to different audiences, to different markets, okay? And obviously, given my position, given my ideological position, given my commitment to improving people's material conditions, I'm in a unique place where I have to yell about the liberals doing the same that the Republicans are doing, and it's not a position that is favorable for many moneyed interests. And of course, when you're getting a chock full of propaganda from every different orbit, both from the liberal side but also from the Republican side, you come in here and you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, just wait 5 years. You'll arrive at my position 5 years from now. Just clip this now and you will remember, oh, well, maybe this wasn't the best idea. Just as I said over and over again with Israel, wait a couple years and you will understand exactly what I'm saying. And many people did understand exactly what I was talking about with respect to Israel. Okay? Just wait a couple months nowadays. You know, it's not, the media cycle is much faster. The media cycle is much faster. People actually move on from things much faster, but people also develop an understanding of how, you know, things are going south much faster as well. We have a way faster burn rate nowadays, and you'll get there. But I will consistently say over and over again that this is not for you. Okay, this is not for me. This is not for you. These kinds of military raids and regime change for extraction of resources is for guys like this. Okay? The military raid on Venezuela and ouster of Maduro will create a financial windfall for a Trump-supporting billionaire investor Paul Singer. Follow this thread for details, says Judd Legume. In November 2025, Singer acquired Citgo, the U.S.-based subsidiary of Venezuela's state-run oil company, for $5.9 billion. The sale was forced by creditors of Venezuela after a country defaulted on its bond payments. Okay? Citgo owns 3 major refineries in the Gulf Coast, 43 oil terminals, and other assets. By all accounts, Singer acquired these assets at a major discount. Advisors of the court that oversaw the sale valued Citgo at $13 billion. Singer acquired Citgo at a bargain price because of the embargo on Venezuelan oil imports to the United States. Citgo refiners are purpose-built to process heavy-grade Venezuelan sour crude. Citgo was forced to source oil from more expensive sources like Canada and Colombia. Industry observers anticipate a rapid rerouting of Venezuelan oil exports, reestablishing the U.S. as a major buyer of the country's volumes. Jamie Brito, an oil analyst, said, access to Venezuelan oil imports will be a game changer for U.S. Gulf Coast refiners in terms of profitability. Paul Singer, thanks to a well-timed transaction, will be one of the largest beneficiaries. In 2024, Singer donated $5 million to Make America Great Again, Inc., Trump's super PAC. Paul Singer is also part of the reason why, because he's such a close ally to Trump's administration, Paul Singer was part of the reason why we did the bailout in Argentina. That's where you might remember his name from. Okay? The point is, we are getting to a place where it's an increasingly smaller group of people that are profiting from all of these actions. Okay? The club gets smaller and smaller, and you will never be a part of it. Okay? You will never be a part of it. Yes, it's getting even smaller than it was before. Yes, it was already it was already tiny. It was already the 1%, right? Obviously, the 1% by definition is a tiny marginal percentage of the population. But nowadays, the 1% is shrinking as well, or at least like who you would determine as a 1% of the 1% is getting smaller and smaller. They are the ones who are bringing in unimaginable super profits year over year. Their net worth keeps growing. Or no, it's sorry, it wasn't Paul Singer. It was Citron in Argentina. You're right. Yeah, we did this for Robert Citron. Trump's Argentina bailout enriches one well-connected U.S. billionaire. A $20 billion U.S. rescue package is a gift for a hedge fund manager with ties to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced a $20 billion package to rescue the Argentinian economy. The risky taxpayer-financed deal, which involves trading U.S. dollars for Argentine pesos, has little upside for ordinary Americans. Argentina is not a significant U.S. trading partner, and its economy, long in turmoil, has little impact on the United States. However, Bessent's announcement had massive economic benefits for one American, billionaire hedge fund manager Rob Citron, who has placed large bets on the future of the Argentine economy. Citron, the co-founder of Discovery Capital Management, is also a friend and former colleague of Scott Bessent, a fact that has not been previously reported in U.S. media outlets. Citron, by his own account, helped make Bessent very wealthy. It's pretty crazy the amount of numbers we move around and we do for literally like billionaires with names, okay? It's no longer even just like companies that we're talking about. It's no longer just like, oh, we're doing this for Chevron, or we're doing this for Exxon. We're doing this for one guy, right? And that's what I mean when I say the number of people that are beneficiaries of these sorts of actions is getting smaller and smaller. Okay? That's what's so crazy about this whole ordeal. The key funder of Massey's primary opposition is a pro-Israel billionaire, Paul Singer, who recently acquired Citgo, the U.S. subsidiary of Venezuela's state oil company. Because I know a lot of people were wondering, what's this guy's take on Israel? Of course he's super pro-Israel. Get out of here. Yes. Singer has also made big bucks off of South American nations in crisis in the past. And who helped him do it? Marco Rubio, who he backed in 2016 against Donald Trump. Marco Rubio, Paul Singer backed in 2016 after Marco Rubio was vetted by another billionaire, if you remember, on his loyalty to Israel. Little Marco, as we know from Jeffrey Epstein emails, Little Marco was vetted and was brought in as the guy who was going to do right by Israel. Vetted on those boundaries, okay? Straight up. Here. And who, you might be wondering, was the person who vetted Marco Rubio for fealty to Israel, according to hacked emails? That's right. It was another Trump friend, Larry Ellison, who also happens to be the largest singular donor to the IDF. Larry Ellison vetted Marco Rubio for fealty to Israel, hacked emails reveal. Why do we know this? Because Larry Ellison was emailing a whole bunch of people who were then emailing Jeffrey Epstein. I think it was that, right? Larry Ellison was emailing Ron Prozor, who was serving in the tail end of his time as Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. And once Marco Rubio was vetted for his fealty to Israel, and he was found to be sufficient, then a bunch of people dumped money into his campaign as the main guy against Donald Trump. Anyway, let's continue. So Paul Singer, thanks to a well-timed transaction, will be one of the largest beneficiaries in 2024. Singer donated $5 million to Make America Great Again, Inc., Trump's super PAC. Singer donated tens of millions more in the 2024 cycle to support Trump's allies, including $37 million to support the election of Republicans to Congress. He also donated an undisclosed amount to Trump's second transition. This June, when Trump sought funds to bankroll a primary challenger to Thomas Massie, who raised Trump's ire by supporting the release of the Epstein files, Singer contributed $1 million, the largest contribution. For updates on the story, more accountability, and journalism follows the money, subscribe to Popular Information. This is Judd Legum's outlet. Interesting. Yeah, Paul Singer also is the chairman of the Manhattan Institute, which houses Christopher Rufo. You might remember Chris Rufo, who is the Mr. CRT, Mr. We're going to make CRT the number one issue for Americans, which did have, unfortunately, some success. Chris Rufo now spends all of his time trying to defend Israel for some reason at a time when normally someone like Chris Rufo would obviously not defend Israel. And I know people that have worked with Chris Rufo personally who have actually said that his previous positions on Israel do not make sense in comparison to what his output is right now. I wonder why. So all of this stuff is obviously connected. All of this stuff is connected with one another. And the connective tissue here is not Judaism, for the record. The connective tissue is capitalism. And that's precisely the reason why other grifters, okay, not just Asmongold, but other grifters who try to present a more intelligent, more comprehensive puzzle for you, like Nick Fuentes, are actually over here talking about how it's awesome that these guys who are super pro-Israel are actually winning hugely from Trump's actions in Venezuela. And the reason why they're defending it is because they are not even anti-Israel. Sure, they're genuinely anti-Semitic, right? But at the end of the day, All they want to do is propagandize American capitalism and defend American capitalism and defend Donald Trump as the vehicle for yielding tremendous American prosperity. Not to the average American, mind you, but to guys like this. And that's it. This is why at the end of the day, if you want to have a consistent, if you want to be consistent and if you want to criticize the American government, if you want to criticize these actions, you have to arrive at an anti-capitalist framework to do it off of. Anything else is simply a distraction. That's precisely the reason why the Groypers and Nick Fuentes' fan base are now actually in this in a state of panic, in a state of disarray. Okay? They're in a state of panic. They don't know what to say about this issue because their own cult leader, Nick Fuentes, has gone back and forth on whether he thinks this action is correct or not. Okay? Ultimately, though, this is the guy who wins big. And if your entire movement is built around getting mad at Jewish billionaires, and now you got a pro-Israel billionaire, okay, that is winning big out of this, all Nazis are going to be like, wait a minute, I thought we were supposed to hate this. What's going on? Paul Singer is also one of the biggest donors to AIPAC Super PAC. He also flew Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito out on his private jet. This is oligarchy in action, a small circle of billionaires buying our government to ensure this country is run for and by them. Okay? The guy who acquired Citgo, Paul Singer. Convert the Groyps. I mean, some of the Groypers, I think, are too lost in the sauce, and they will just like lean into someone else who is doing more maximum anti-Semitism. They'll never... Because like a big part of this resentment, a big part of like the fascist resentment is anti-communism. They consider communism to also be like a Jewish invention. They consider socialism to be a Jewish invention. So any kind of like anti-capitalist sentiment that they hear, it actually breaks their brain. They go, oh, I hate that. So I don't think it's going to happen. Especially because like blaming everything specifically on Jews is unironically the thing that you do when you don't want to admit that it's capitalism, right? It's perhaps one of the best ways of shifting people's priorities away to an outgroup, a nefarious outgroup that's monolithic in their understanding of the world, when that is not the case at all. And for the record, capital owners are not monolithic in their understanding of the world as well. It's just their own class consciousness. It's their own class position. Okay, so remember, it's not so dogmatic, and we mustn't be dogmatic in our way of thinking. Yeah, that's why we say anti-Semitism is the socialism of fools. Okay, some of them will splinter over. They're not all motivated by hate. Some of them default to hate out of ignorance. As leftists, we just have to stay consistent and disciplined on message. We're right, just too early. Yeah. My roommate, who's an Asmongold watcher, thinks capitalism is a Jewish invention. So how are the Jews the magic money people while also the ones pushing communism? Shouldn't this brick their brains to some degree? Their brains are bricked. That's the reason why they think it's all Jews that are responsible for this. Okay, that's the whole point. When you're so close to arriving at the truth, and then you take like a major sidestep, when you take like a major pivot off into a totally irrelevant group that you hyper focus on, and it becomes your hyperfixation. Yeah, that's how it works. That's how conspiracy theories work. There is no logic in this bigotry. It's the same principle behind undocumented migrants are stealing all of our welfare, but they're also stealing all of our jobs. Which is it? Which is it? How does this work? There is no logic in bigoted sentiment. It's self-soothing behavior. It's cope. That's the whole point. It makes you feel better. It takes the responsibility away from you. It takes the responsibility away from institutions that you think actually have your best interest in mind. If you're an America-loving patriot and you've been convinced that the Republican Party is the perfect representation of America-loving patriotism, you have to believe that it's another nefarious, dark group of people that are actually pulling the puppet strings and hypnotizing people and blackmailing them. And that's the only reason why our big, beautiful, brave, WASP, white, Christian, patriotic politicians are engaging in these sorts of actions. They can't ever comprehend that maybe those guys don't actually have your best interest in mind at all. And it has nothing to do with like Jewish puppet masters. Okay. There is a puppet master. This is true. There are many puppet masters, an increasingly smaller number of puppet masters. Some of them also happen to be Jewish. Many of them are Christian. Some of them are even Muslim, as a matter of fact. But they're not puppeteering on the basis of like a organized jury. They're puppeteering on the basis of organized capital. This is the global financial elite. Okay? They are corporation owners. They are corporate owners. They are capitalists. And they are the ones who are actually using the American government like fleshlight, okay? Making the American government do their bidding. And it's never for you, okay? It's never for you. It will never come back to you. It will never trickle down to you. And it shouldn't take you 10 years or 20 years to come to that reality after the dust is settled like it did with Iraq, okay? When you have a guy who successfully ran against the Iraq war when he was going up against Hillary Clinton, turn around consistently claim he's actually the peace president over and over again, and then engage in another regime change for oil scheme that you will not benefit from, you should probably snap out of it. Anyway, Trump says the U.S. is not at war with Venezuela. Report.
Mounting questions about the future of Venezuela. President Trump insisting even after the capture of President Nicolas Maduro, the U.S. is not at war with Venezuela. In a new interview, Trump saying, "We're at war with people that sell drugs. We're at war with people that empty their prisons into our country." Maduro's Vice President Delcy.
As a Shia Iraqi, I'm thankful Saddam and his family is gone. It was Al-Qaeda that ruined the country. Once again. Okay. The same forces that destabilized the country, destabilized it by invading it, okay? And it's the same forces that are ruining the country. So you're basically saying, like, I'm thankful Saddam and his family is gone, but also, you know, the people that did that obviously ruined the country.
Rodriguez was sworn in as interim leader yesterday. Trump says Rodriguez is cooperating with U.S. officials, but there could...
You said this exact same thing 7 years ago, time-stamped?
We talk a great deal about Venezuela and what kind of intervention is an absolute necessity in Venezuela because Maduro is a violent dictator and like we need to take their oil away from them and privatize, okay? But meanwhile, while that's happening, we are aiding a theocratic monarchy in committing atrocities in Yemen. One of the largest man-made famines on the planet right now in Yemen. And that blockade is aided and abetted at every single step of the way by the U.S. military-industrial complex. And if you ask Donald Trump what's going on, and he has vetoed this, by the way. Bernie Sanders led a bill in Congress to stop aiding Saudi Arabia, and I think it was also about implementing some sanctions on Saudi Arabia until they scaled back their warfare on Yemen. And Trump said no. But
this is also part of the reason why it's so funny when people say, Hasan, you changed. The only thing that changed is my voice, okay, and maybe my hair, and also the gray beard hairs. Not my commentary, my worldview, my positions have not changed. Maybe you didn't actually pay attention. Maybe you didn't actually pay attention back then, right? And you started paying attention in a negative fashion now. But you have to stop listening to these who had no opinions on this 7 years ago, who barely have a consistent position on it now. And you have to stop getting your information from these people. Okay, they are consistently lying to you. I don't know how else to describe it. Okay, and one of the biggest lies is, of course, the notion that I'm actually inconsistent. You can go back to any point in time and revisit some of the commentary that I did on this stuff, and you will realize I was saying it ahead of time many, many years ago.
We are responsible for it. When you ask Trump why he's doing this, he says, "Hey, well, they're paying us $10 billion in weapons. They're going to go and buy it from someone else, folks."
I mean, I don't agree with that. I agree with you. In your view on that, I'm not against criticism of things the government does, things the military industrial complex has led to. I think where we got down this train of thought just was the idea that the maker of the bomb is just as responsible when at the end of the day, the maker of the bomb isn't making it explicitly for, the task that leads.
Your old clip, Brandon and Maduro. Oil. So, we're coming back to Venezuela. We need Venezuelan oil. So, we're coming back to Venezuela and we're saying, hey, listen, baby, let me tell you something. Listen, Dura, I want to talk to you real good. You understand? Now, I know I've said some things that you might have misunderstood, misconstrued. I've been shutting you out, but I should have been. I've been shutting my own heart out, Madura. Look alive, Jack. Baby, I need you. I need you so bad, baby. Madura, I need you so bad. Oh, I love you, Madura. I love communism, Jack. I love it. This is when Brandon moved to get more Venezuelan oil to make up for to make up for the global supply, the lack of global supply. Okay. Madura. That's right. Madura. But yeah, I've been consistent. Not. And my principles on this have not changed either. Okay? This kind of military adventurism is not for you. It's not good for the civilians and the military and the population that we're dominating, but it's also not good for the people who are in the Imperial Core either, okay? It's not good for you. It's just not. And you realize that, unfortunately, far too late when it comes to places like Iraq. And you, for some weird reason, cannot take that example of Iraq and the anxiety and the anger and resentment that you feel about all of those years and all of that money spent so that global finance capital justify higher profit margins, and you cannot apply that to this instance. Part of that is because Trump is doing it. Part of that is because you're chock full of anti-communist propaganda, so you think we're destroying communism here somehow, right? And it's really funny because even Donald Trump in this day and age is not even trying to lie to you. He's just saying it out loud. He's like, nah, it's oil. It's for oil. We're going to have free oil. The part of that lie is, of course, when he says it's going to be good for you, right? This is somehow going to benefit you. That's a lie. But there is no, we're democratizing or liberalizing Venezuela. There is none of that.
Complications. Venezuela's powerful interior minister, the so-called security kingpin, Diosdado Cabello, who was also indicted with Maduro, is now vowing revenge for the U.S. raid. The Miami Herald reports Cabello, who remains in Venezuela, is sending messages to military officers and calling on his supporters to take to the streets. Analysts warn he could threaten Rodriguez's control.
I mean, Diosdado Cabello, being there, the head of their security forces, senior military guy, crucial to drug trafficking through Venezuela. Why would you leave him there?
President Trump last night threatened more U.S.
I think you should clarify that it's not designed for us, nor is it coincidentally good for us or those in the target nation. Yes. The entire design is so that it doesn't benefit you at all. As I said already, part of this is also to keep these other countries, right? These other countries in the periphery down. It's to keep them destabilized, or it's to keep them, or it's only to stabilize them, but with our design in mind. Okay? It's to only stabilize them enough that you can prop up factories and utilize their labor force. Because their labor force will work for pennies on the dollar in comparison to the domestic labor force. You understand? And then you're shocked when you no longer have a good paying job in the United States of America. This is part of it. This is part of the story. All of that is endlessly helpful for a hand a handful selected super billionaires. That's it. It's not good for you. It's never going to be good for you. You're always going to be in the process. But unfortunately, these guys get to somehow dupe you into believing that it is for you, that you'll get free oil, or at least we're dominating someone else. And I get it. Like, I understand. I understand where this is coming from, right? Because you feel dominated and humiliated on a daily basis, working at your job, having to constantly listen to your manager who's representing the interests of your bosses that you will never even see. And you recognize that there is like something up about the system. You recognize that every morning you wake up and you think, is this what I was put on this earth for? To go on Dick Suck Mountain every day, to sign in and climb Dick Suck Mountain, Mount Dick Suck every goddamn day? Is this what it's all about? And then in the few moments that I have to myself, maybe I slam a couple of brewskis, watch my favorite sport team, possibly gamble a little bit of the marginal disposable income that I have remaining, because all of it went to rent that is subsidizing the lifestyle of my landlord. Is this what it's all about? This sucks. And you get angry and you get resentful, right? And then someone tells you, well, hold on now. There's someone else out there that's even less than you. There's someone else out there. There's a group of people out there that are even lesser than you. Don't worry. You're technically higher than they are, right? Because at least you're like not on the receiving end of the boot, right? You're at least are in the United States of America. And as long as there's other people out there that we dominate, you can feel powerful. You can feel powerful. America, baby. And that's where a lot of these people delude themselves into believing that this kind of military action is actually good for them. And there are plenty of people who benefit from serving you this propaganda, okay? Because there is a market for it. There is a market for it. There is a market for people who want to feel better about their conditions. It's called the Republican Party for the most part. Liberals engage in it to a certain degree as well, but it's mostly just like the Republicans and hog mentality. I think for most people, it's just comfort at this point. The majority does not really care about the morals of military action. No, that's exactly what it is. And it's just crazy because they're not even giving you any hope that you are going to benefit from this imperial conquest, right? Your life is still going to suck. You're still going to have to clock in at Dick Suck Mountain next morning, okay? You're still not going to have any free time to improve yourself. You're still going to have to pay rent day in, day out, every single month. 50% of your paycheck going directly to your rent. And you're just going to keep feeling a sense of anxiety about the banality of your daily existence. What is this all for? Now, for those who are in this community, you already recognize that the game is set up against you. So you can at least design your life in a way that benefits you, right? You can at least see where things are headed. This chatter says, you consistently present factual information, yet the public's vote favored a misrepresentation. It is true. This is unfortunate. But my goal is to, in spite of the public favoring that misrepresentation, my goal is to just boulder through it over and over again. That's my own version of Dick Suck Mountain, okay? That's my own version of clocking into Dick Suck Mountain, where every day dicks are being launched in my direction. Hasan, you're a communist, you're a terrorist, you're an America hater, you're wrong. I don't think healthcare would be good for me. Shut up. I'll keep pushing it. I'll be the sin eater and the dick eater, okay? And I'll keep climbing Dick Suck Mountain because I do believe that there are people who tune in every single day and they are slowly but surely, they have their minds changed, okay?
Military attacks if Venezuela's interim government stops cooperating. Meanwhile, Maduro and his wife made their first appearance in a New York courtroom transported via helicopter from jail, both pleading not guilty to narco-terrorism charges. Maduro's attorney calling the U.S. raid a military abduction and claiming because Maduro is head of a sovereign state, he is immune from prosecution, even though more than 50 countries refused to recognize Maduro as the legitimate president. Leaving court, Maduro responded to a heckler saying, "I am the elected president. I am a prisoner of war. I will be free."
His lawyer says the case is going to be complicated. For now, he's going nowhere. Maduro did not even ask for bail and returned to jail. We may not see him again until March, when he's next due here in court.
On Capitol Hill last night, top lawmakers were briefed on the raid. House Speaker Mike Johnson calling it justified and denying the goal was regime change.
We are not at war. We do not have U.S. armed forces in Venezuela, and we are not occupying that country.
But Democrats warning of echoes of Iraq, concerned about the lack of planning.
Did you get a sense in the briefing that the administration has a plan for the next steps in Venezuela?
No, I have real concerns about that.
A day after Trump.
I think it's pretty funny that Donald Trump literally told the oil barons that he was going to do this in Venezuela before he told anybody else. And when they say the administration seemingly doesn't have a plan here, that's not just politics. That's not just partisan posturing. There is some truth to that, because right now, what the admin is trying to do, and here I'll give Trump a little bit of credit on this, okay? He is living in the post-Iraq war quagmire world, right? He recognizes that like a 20-year occupation of Venezuela is not going to be good for anybody, right? It's not going to be good for the legacy of Trump. It's not going to be good. It's going to, frustrate people, especially if that military intervention happens under his watch. He knows that, which is part of the reason why he just immediately dropped the Machado thing, right? He was like, Machado, unpopular. Nobody gives a about you. Sorry. We're not going to work with you. And that's why he's trying to work with the existing Maduro government that is under this threat that if they don't play ball, what will happen to them is exactly what happened to Maduro. We can come in and out of your country as we see fit, and we can extract your leaders if we want to. We can just create like a fake narrative, or we can just assassinate you if we want to, right? So that's the dynamic at play here. The dynamic at play here is Trump recognizes that he cannot militarily occupy Venezuela, but he wants to control the Venezuelan government. However, if the current Venezuelan government does not play ball with the Trump administration's demands, or if they continue having a degree of autonomy in this process that sometimes sometimes be tricky for Trump to control, then he's cooked. Because obviously, the best thing that could happen here is if Maria Machado was right, and that the Chavistas are gone and they won by 70%, and every Venezuelan is like begging for military intervention and to sell off all of the Venezuelan natural resources, right? Like if that was the case, that would be the best scenario. You go in, kidnap Maduro, government falls apart, you implement Machado as the leader, nobody is actually even mad, right? You completely stabilize this new puppet state. There's no reason for unimaginable repression. There's no conflict. There's no civil war. There's no 8 million Chavistas with weapons that are a part of like the national defense force that will then take up arms against the new puppet state. All of that stuff doesn't happen, right? And then you can dump boatloads, tens of billions of dollars into the Venezuelan refineries, as America once did prior to Chavez's takeover, right? And you get to refine that sweet, juicy, thick Venezuelan crude, right? But obviously, you can't do that. Obviously, this is not going to happen. So now he's stuck. And now it's entirely in the hands of Maduro's successor. Okay? And today I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into her background as well. We're going to talk about Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president and the current interim president of Venezuela. We will talk about her. We'll talk about her brother. We'll talk about her Marxist father. I'm not going to say that like she betrayed Maduro or anything like that, because there are some good things about her background, and there's some things that she did in like the last couple of years under the direction of Maduro that that the New York Times calls the Venezuelan transition from corrupt Marxism, corrupt Marxist policies to corrupt laissez-faire economic principles. Because there is a little bit of truth to what Delcy Rodriguez did in terms of liberalizing the Venezuelan economy in an effort to try to bring back, in an effort to try and get the corporate oligarchs in Venezuela to play ball. Okay? Now, revisionist scum, it's so funny to say that about Venezuela. First of all, the Chavistas are all revisionists. You understand that, right? What do you mean? Venezuela was a social democracy and always has been a social democracy. Venezuela has never actually been a one-party communist state. They've never had siege communism. They've actually always been revisionist, and there are obviously significant issues with that kind of revisionist, with that kind of revisionist governance. Venezuela is nowhere near the tyrannical communist dictatorship that the Western media presents it as. If it was, it probably would be surviving right now a lot better. Than it currently is. Venezuela is a social democracy through and through. As a matter of fact, I used to talk about this all the time. Old heads will remember this. There was a Fox News report back when Venezuela was popping, even under Chavez. And there was a period of prosperity, let me tell you. When Venezuela had this period of prosperity, when they were still a single resource economy, but were able to sell to the rest of the globe, and oil prices were great for Venezuela, there was tremendous prosperity in Venezuela all the way up until like around 2012, I would say. And what's really interesting about this is that, I mean, even before 2012, there was a downtrend. Fox News, I still remember, in 2012 reported about how Venezuela wasn't socialist at all. Okay? Venezuela wasn't socialist at all. As a matter of fact, the private enterprise percentage in the Venezuelan economy was actually lower than France. This is the endless paradigm of Western media. When a country is doing well, and this is something that I like to call the China equation, China is doing well because why? Because Deng is a capitalist. Okay? China's doing well because of capitalism. When China is bad, it's because it's communism. The percentage of public sector, the percentage of, you mean public sector? Yes. But no, but private enterprise in general. Private enterprise versus public sector percentages in the economy was literally lower in the percentage of the private sector versus public sector in the Venezuelan economy was lower than France. France had a higher percentage of public sector jobs and public enterprise in general than Venezuela does. Hold on, I'm going to try to find the fucking article real quick. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. Back when they used to write about Venezuela in this way. Caracas, Venezuela. Venezuela's panicked minister says the South American country's economy grew 5.6% during the first 3 months of 2012. Jorge Giordani says the economy could grow as much by 7% this year. Giordani says this year's economic expansion was largely driven by 29.6% growth in construction as the government of President Hugo Chavez funneled billions of dollars into a nationwide initiative to build hundreds of thousands of apartments for the poor. Venezuela's economy rebounded and grew about 4% in 2011. Giordani said Thursday's high public spending will help spur the growth of Venezuela's privately owned businesses from May 17th, 2012. What socialism? Private sector still dominates Venezuelan economy despite Chavez crusade. This is the article I was looking for. Thank you, Chatter, for finding it for me. Caracas. It's President Hugo Chavez's biggest economic battle cry and is getting louder as Venezuela suffers a recession. We're going to bury Venezuelan capitalism. Yet creating a socialist economy is one of Chavez's most elusive goals, a stark example of the disconnect between the president's rhetoric and the reality on the ground. In fact, the private sector still controls 2/3 of Venezuela's economy, the same as when Chavez was elected in 1998. According to estimates by the central bank. The reasons are political and practical. Chavez knows most Venezuelans recoil from the idea of Cuban-style state control, and his government is far from being capable of taking over and running a majority of the economy. Basically, he recognizes that in this day and age, in a global economy, complete state control would just doom the country, said Michael Shifter, an analyst at the Washington-based Inter-American Dialogue. So his strategy has been to selectively nationalize companies, set up state-run supermarkets, and promote worker-managed businesses while trying to convince Venezuelans to accept this vaguely defined brand of 21st century socialism. It is a hard sell for a country hooked on consumerism. Shopping malls are filled with middle and upper-class Venezuelans browsing through Lacoste shirts, Guess jeans, and Montblanc pens. Sales have declined in the recession, but just about everyone who can afford it seems to own a BlackBerry, and Scotch whiskey flows liberally in upscale restaurants at the equivalent of $110 a bottle. Just as Chavez has ramped up his anti-capitalism tirades, he finds himself facing one of the biggest scandals of his tenure involving a state-run food distributor. The company, PDVAL, left more than 2,700 shipping containers for rice, flour, milk, chicken, beef, and other foods in a port rotting beyond their expiration dates. Its former chief and 2 others have been arrested, and some Venezuelans have begun to mockingly call the state company pudreval, using the Spanish word for rotting. One newspaper cartoon depicted Karl Marx wearing a gas mask to ward off the stench. It's a glaring example of the problems and delays that regularly plague Venezuela's government-run operations. Dude, Chavez and because they allocated all the main resources and income to oil revenue? Yeah, okay, dude. Listen. Yes, I don't disagree with this. But once again, it's incredibly difficult to run a country, especially with a revisionist attitude such as this one, when you're trying to do like modest social democracy and you're basically under siege internally by all of the corporate oligarchs in your country that don't want any kind of state-owned enterprises competing with their for-profit driven franchises, while also getting destroyed over and over again and consistently meddled with by the largest imperial superpower on the planet, the United States of America. Because what you're talking about is literally after, like this is a decade after, almost a decade after, America already had done a coup. Okay? Yes, I agree. Hyper focusing on a single resource economy is idiotic without diversifying your agricultural output, things like that. Except there are plenty of single resource economies that have actually survived. One must ask the question, why? Look at Saudi Arabia. How did they survive as a single resource economy for as long as they did? Oh, I wonder how. It's because they were lapdogs to the American empire. That is how they survived. It's how it goes. If you play ball with America, if you're America's lapdog, then you get to be a single resource economy and you get to yield the bounty. You can even be a monarchy at that point and America won't do about it. They love it, actually, as long as you maintain stability. But if you're a single resource economy, even if it's the same resource, regardless of the density of the crude, by the way, because that's irrelevant in this conversation, we were lapdogs with China and Russia and couldn't survive anyways. Oh my God. You think Venezuela and its relationship with Russia and China was not pertinent on survival rather than was to the same degree as Saudi Arabia? Are you insane? Saudi Arabia's relationship with America is not comparable to Venezuela's relationship with China and Russia. This is just, again, hog sentiment coming from someone who has a lot more knowledge about the Venezuelan economy than the average person does, okay? But what you're doing is basically saying, oh, well, we were lapdogs. What's next? You're going to say Venezuela was run by Cuba, right? That's usually the other thing that I hear. This comparison is absurd. I know. There's a common talking point in Venezuelan discourse. And the other common talking point that I think is even funnier is that Venezuela was dominated by Cuba. I'm not a hog. I'm just a Venezuelan. I like you, Hasan, actually. No, I know. But this is an incorrect assessment. I'm not saying you're a hog. I'm saying this is a hog assessment and an incorrect one. because the relationship between China, Russia, and Venezuela was born out of survival due to the things that I just mentioned. But you're not wrong when you say it was a single resource economy and got destroyed. You know, you're right. State capitalism on display since Chavez started. We were more of a social democracy. And then with Maduro, everything changed to a state capitalist system. Chavez and Maduro, because they allocated all the main resources and income with oil revenue, and the oil plummeted and couldn't sustain every social program Chavez started. Maduro actually could have reverted the situation, but he made it worse when the sanctions began to cripple our economy in 2017. The instability first came from oil prices diminishing, but a big part of the problem was also the way that debt was managed, because debt was ultimately still managed in the hands of Western capital. And when you have a design that is completely controlled by nefarious actors that want to destroy your economy, it's going to be an almost impossible situation to overcome. But yes, the death of Venezuela came from the sanctions at its weakest moment. But in any case, I mean, Cuba had a lot of influence in Venezuela politics. Yeah, brother, if you think that Cuba is like running Venezuela, though, that's a little ridiculous. Yeah, of course, these countries that have similar ideologies living in the backyard of the largest imperial superpower that happens to be capitalist and has dominated the continent with military dictatorships that they have openly installed over and over again. Yeah, of course they're going to collaborate with one another. They also collaborate with Mexico too. Why do you think Trump keeps talking about Mexico and Cuba? Because guess what? Mexico has offered a lifeline to Cuba in spite of all of the issues that Cuba is experiencing. So that's the reason why we keep talking about how we're going to destroy Cuba and we're going to destroy Mexico and we're going to destroy Colombia. I wonder why. Because it's like the remaining holdouts that want modest social democracy for its people. Because first and foremost, the American government cannot stand a country that will not abide by IMF and World Bank-backed austerity measures. Whether it's the IMF or the World Bank or it's America directly telling them to do austerity, they can't sit there. They will never allow it. They want these countries destroyed. Yes, Mexico is Cuba's top oil provider. I know. That's why I brought up Mexico. Yeah. Cuba had power over the USSR, not the other way around. They orchestrated it all. Exactly. Can I ask you a question? Why are you and your comrades so weak? You have such little motion politically. In Asmon we trust. I don't know. Maybe because the average American thinks that, Donald Trump is actually going to do right by them. On the one hand, the average American goes, "Oh, it's really weird and gross that the Trump administration is seemingly too invested in the defense of an elite pedophilic cabal." But then they also literally love when Trump turns around and says, "Oh, we're gonna kill a bunch of Venezuelan people and steal their oil. It's gonna be awesome for you." And you go, "Yeah, that's right. It is gonna be awesome." Perhaps that's the reason why it's very difficult reason with a bunch of people. I will still continue trying. Hassan, when are you hitting a 3-plate bench? So weak. When I start doing TRT, brother. In any case, there's also obviously corruption that has always been a plague in the Venezuelan economy. Let's be real. There's mismanagement of the currency, but like ultimately, if you were to place it's entirely dependent on what you place your emphasis on, right? Because internal issues are ultimately easy to overcome if you are not being dominated every step of the way by a country like the United States of America, right? Like, think about, I always go back to China as this example, but like, think about it this way, man. Cultural revolution, the Great Leap Forward, one-child policy. These would destroy. These three things combined would eviscerate any country, okay? One of them would literally destroy most countries. And yet they've been able to overcome this, okay? And part of the reason why they've been able to overcome it is because they just kept working through it no matter what, okay? They kept working through it no matter what. And also, partially, they made themselves an irreplaceable force in the global marketplace. But if they had not had inconsistent foreign policy goals and did not benefit a little bit from the Sino-Soviet split that then made them, in many instances, an ally to the United States of America in terms of foreign policy and a potential bulwark against the USSR, which was the main enemy at the time, they probably would have been destroyed and dominated a long time ago if America actually locked in and decided, yeah, we got China up. This doesn't mean that they didn't actually try China up. Of course they did. But there's a reason why you have to realize, like, they decided to normalize relations with the PRC, recognize the PRC, and even drop, like, the CIA operation in Tibet, right? There's a reason why they decided, like, this is not significant enough for us. All of that stuff actually works. All of that stuff plays a major role in allowing countries to quietly develop autonomy, to quietly develop sovereignty. Okay? It didn't happen in Venezuela for a multitude of different reasons. But these kinds of issues with, like, corruption or mismanagement of currency, things like that, would unironically be marginal problems that you can actually overcome if you didn't have to deal with the internal conflict all the time with the unimaginably wealthy Venezuelan capital owners that are trying to collaborate with the American government actively to overthrow your government over and over again. That's why it's so funny. Like, people talk about 2024 being like the time when Maduro definitely stole the election, except the same opposition forces have said every single election has been stolen in Venezuela and demanded that America overturn the results every single time. The only reason why the 2024 narrative stuck is because that was actually literally the peak of Maduro's unpopularity. They've been saying it. They've been saying it since the 90s, man. What do you mean? But yeah.
Trump also threatened Colombia, Cuba, and Mexico.
What about the people that got tortured and killed by the Venezuelan government? Any comment on that? You shouldn't dehumanize Venezuelans just because you don't agree with what the Trump administration is doing. I don't think you understand. My criticism of, like, what Trump did in Venezuela is not because I hate Donald Trump, okay? A lot of people mistake this. My criticisms of what the American government is doing is a uniparty criticism, is a criticism against the uniparty attitude that we've always had against Venezuela, okay? You're the one who thinks, for some weird reason, that Trump is actually liberating Venezuela by punishing Maduro for torturing your friends or something. That's an idiotic notion. I'm sorry. The American government does not give a about its own citizens, let alone Venezuelan citizens.